if you have a choice, where do you want to store your money? Do you want to store it in somebody else's bank where someone else is making the profits, the dividends, the stockholders and the shareholders of the conventional bank? Or do you want to store it into the insurance company, the whole life policy, and a mutual company that pays dividends, where you are the policy owner? You own that contract. You have first right to the cash value in that money. You're earning the profits and the dividends. There are no shareholders. It's a mutual company. It's going in your own banking system where it's growing internally tax-free. And I know you don't know this right now, I'm 16 years old, but the best news of all, the government's completely out of your hair. Why are they out of your hair? Because you've already paid tax on that money that you put into that policy. So you paid tax one time only. You put that money into the policy, and now the growth is growing tax-free inside of the policy. And how can you access cash? You're going to access it through policy loans.
Well, Brent, thank you so much for joining us on the Infinite Banking Initiative.
Thank you. So glad to be here today.
We want to start off by hearing how you came across the infinite banking concept.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So anyway, I'll take you way back to how I started. You know, just in my past life, I was a chiropractor. I had clinics in the Kansas City area, and I went to this chiropractic conference. It was back in 2006. And I heard somebody speak on stage about this infinite banking concept, how to become your own banker. And I looked at it and watched it, and I'm like, man, that looks really, really good, but it just seems too good to be true. There's no way it could possibly work that way. So I saw it. I got the information. I bought the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I brought it home. I put it on the bookshelf, did nothing with it. I kind of forgot about it. After I got back home, I went back to my normal chiropractic life. And then I went back to another chiropractic conference about 2 years later in 2008, right around there. And about 10 or 12 of my chiropractic colleagues that were at that previous event with me back in 2006 were coming up to me and saying, Brent, isn't that banking concept powerful? Isn't that a powerful financial tool? It allows you to pay off debt, to recycle, recapture money, to keep control of your money, to keep that money in your family. And they were going on and on. About 10 or 12 of my colleagues were throwing up all over me about it. So I thought to myself, there has to be something to this, right? There's no way that like 10 or 12 of my closest colleagues are lying to me. So there has to be some truth to this. So I came home. It was February of 2008. And I told my wife, I said, honey, we have to start this concept in our financial life. Now, it was at that time, February of 2008, I was $984,711 in debt. That's what I owed to the third-party creditors. Now, people say, well, how do you know that number? And so how were you almost $1 million in debt? Well, again, that was part of the exercise. I had to know what that number was. And so, all right, so how was I $1 million in debt? Well, again, I had my house. Again, I had my chiropractic clinic. At that time, I had 2 clinics. I had my student loans from chiropractic school. I'm also an airplane pilot. So as an airplane pilot, I have to have my own airplane, right? I also had a house on the Lake of the Ozarks between St. Louis and Kansas City. That's where I'm coming to you from today. And if you have a house on the lake, you got to have a boat and a wave runner, right? I mean, yeah, man, you can't have a house on the lake without a boat and a wave runner. So it didn't take me a lot to become almost $1 million in debt. Well, I applied this concept in my life and I started to pay down that debt. And again, the thing I never had to do is I never had to change my cash flow. I didn't have to work any harder, take any additional risk, or lose control of my money. All I did was added one simple step. And that simple step was what Nelson Nash taught us, the infinite banking concept and how to become your own banker. And I did that, and I was able to pay all that debt off in 39 months, 3 years and 3 months by adding that one step. So I started telling other people about this, right? I was like excited about it. And then I went to the guy that I started my first policy with one day. And I actually went to his office to ask him some questions about my policy. And he walked downstairs and he says, Brent, I was looking through my records and I see that you've referred me 41 clients. And I said to him, I said, Ray, you've never paid me a dime for any of those clients I referred you. And I was kind of laughing about it. He said, no, in all seriousness, he says, you're very good at this. He says, you're using this in your own life. He says, you're telling people about it. He says, you should consider doing this. I said, really? I could do this? He said, yeah. I said, what do I got to do? He says, well, go get your insurance license and do this. And, you can work with us. So that's what I did. I did that back around 2012. I actually became licensed in March of 2012. That's when I got my insurance license. And all I do now really is I do the exact same thing that I was doing back then. I tell people how this works in my own life and how I use my policies. And of course, as years go on, which is now we're 13 plus years later, I have like 29 of my own policies. I buy at least one policy every 1 to 2 years, and so anyway, okay, so the thing that I did is I stayed in that agency. I was in that agency from 2012 to 2017. In 2017, I went out the thing I did is I went out on my own and I started our own agency, which is called The Money Multiplier. All right. And a lot of us know us as The Money Multiplier. And now we just spread this message around the country. And so we do it mainly through live speaking events. That's what we do. We do a lot of live events where people will invite us to come onto their stage and speak about this concept. To give you an example, quite a few of the events we do are with real estate investors. So for example, they have maybe a 2-day event or a 3-day event, and I'll get 60 or 90 minutes to go speak on stage about the infinite banking concept. And a lot of times they just invite me to speak, but sometimes I have to sponsor those events because, so as you guys know, whenever you put on an event, you go to a hotel and you got to pay for the room and the equipment and all of that. It costs money. So they're looking for sponsors. And in exchange for my sponsorship, I get to get up on stage and I get to speak about this, right? So anyway, that's what I really did from 2012 all the way to 2020. Well, what happened in 2020? COVID hit. And I said to my wife, I said, honey, our business is going to go to crap because I can't speak on stage anymore. There's no live events, right? So I said, I got to figure out something else to do. Maybe I got to go back and get into chiropractic, because again, I was out of chiropractic, right? Okay. So I still owned my chiropractic clinics, but I wasn't practicing in them. I had 5 clinics at the time. I sold my last one in 2017. But again, I wasn't practicing. I had associate docs in them. But after 2017, I had sold all the clinics, right? So the thing that just happened is we just transformed everything into events like we're doing right now on this StreamYard, this virtual event, podcasts, Zoom, webinars, and things like that. So everything just went to virtual. And quite honestly, I didn't think it was going to work as well, but it even worked better. And now fast forward to where we're at now, mid 2025, again, the thing we're doing is we're helping tons of people. We're helping tons of people in our agency. We have over 17,000 clients in every state of the country. I don't believe there's anybody, and I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but I don't think there's anybody on this planet that does more infinite banking business with insurance companies than what we do. And I want to be clear. This is all we do. Right? It's not like we do a little of this, a little IUL, a little of all this other stuff. No. We are 100% infinite banking. We are 100% our Nelson Nash. This is exactly what we eat, live, and breathe. And again, so just to kind of speak about that, so I know when you guys have your think tanks, which I'm going to recommend anybody that has not been to a think tank needs to come to a think tank. And I'm going to tell you this, that you're not going to like every single thing that you hear at a think tank. You're going to disagree with stuff that you hear at a think tank, and you're not going to jive and resonate with every speaker or every person that you meet. And you might even look at David Stearns and say, what's wrong with that guy? He doesn't smile very much. Is he mad at me or what? No, that's just David. That's just David. It's not personal. That's just him, right? So again, right, because yes, when you go to a think tank, the thing is that you're not going to agree with everything, but you need to get there to get around with those like-minded people, and also just to kind of talk about think tank. All right. So again, right, a lot of people think that this infinite banking thing is just something like a cult or something out there that's not really real. Well, I'm telling you that they have at think tank, they have at least 5 insurance companies, 5 mutual insurance companies that are there that are promoting and sponsoring what is being taught at think tank. And let me tell you, these mutual companies are, like a couple hundred years old, sometimes a little older than that. And they are not going to come and sponsor and promote an event that they think is some kind of a sham or a cult or whatever. They love our business. They love our business. I'm very in with 3 of those companies. With 3 of those companies, 3 of the 5 that I'm thinking of, I don't, there might be more than 5. I know there's at least 5. But 3 of the 5 companies, and I'll just go ahead and name them, and Lafayette Life, One America, and Security Mutual Life, right? They love our business. And I'm going to tell you that we at the Money Multiplier, we were the #1 agency for all 3 of those companies last year in 2024. We were the #1 agency. So that means we are doing a lot of production. We are helping and we are serving a lot of families to break the bonds of financial slavery that they don't even realize they're in and take back control of their own money. And the companies love this type of business. And why do they love this business? Because our clients are happy. Our clients are happy. Now, are they 100% happy? No, 100% is not always happy. There's always going to be 1 or 2 out there, or 3 or 4 that are going to always, I could be standing on stage saying, come up and get gold bars from me. I'm giving them away, and they wouldn't come up and get them because they're thinking it's a scam or a sham or whatever it is. But remember who I was, Brent Kesler, sitting in that audience in 2006 at a chiropractic conference. And I said, this has got to be too good to be true. There's no way that it can work this way. But trust me, it is not. So I'm telling you guys, whoever's listening to this, go learn about this concept. Read Nelson Nash's book, not just one time. Read his book. I recommend that you read through it the first time quickly. Just read through it quickly. You're not going to get everything. And then go back the second time and read page 1 to 50 and write notes in the margin. And read that book at least once a year, twice a year. And every time you read it, you're going to pick up a new nugget that's in there. And it's the truth. It is just the God's honest truth about money. But the problem is we get all wrapped up in this noise that's out there. I call it noise. Have you heard that? Have you ever heard that Kenny Chesney song called Noise? I refer to that a lot in my speaking. You cannot listen to all that noise that's out there, because guess what the biggest thing that we battle is? The biggest thing we battle is the haters on this concept. And a lot of those haters, most of them are other insurance agents that, again, guys, I thought chiropractors eat their own young. No, chiropractors are great compared to insurance agents eating their own young. It's crazy. But we just got to keep speaking the truth. And I believe Nelson Nash always talked about getting to that 10%, getting to that 10%. And I think we're making headway. I don't know those stats, but I know that we're serving a ton of people. And I know you have a lot of other great practitioners out there serving a ton of people too.
Yeah. Well, it's a different set of challenges now. 2006, when you first heard about the infinite banking concept, it was like, what is he talking about? What is infinite? What is, and then it took you 2 years to get some reinforcement. Nowadays, there's a different challenge because everybody's talking about infinite banking concept. Everybody is. Obviously, because, the dogs eat the dogs, the insurance agents want to compete with the agent down the street because they hate their guts typically. They're experts also, right? So everybody's an expert now.
Yeah. And guys, the thing is, so like as far as the other agents are not really competition. They're not competition because again, right? So as I said earlier, the thing we do is focus on one thing only. So if a person wants a specific, like if they want a specific type of policy, like an IUL, because that's what they heard all the noise about. Well, great. I could sell you an IUL, but I would never sell you one because I would never buy one myself. We don't, because it doesn't, because it does not work. It doesn't work for what we do. We sell whole life policies in mutual companies that pay dividends, that have guaranteed values and guaranteed growth. I appreciate you guys just doing business with the mutual companies that are rock solid in what we do. And again, I know you guys could even do better and probably get more, sponsors and things like that. But as you know, some companies just don't accept what we do. There's one company that came out a few years ago and said, hey, if you're doing infinite banking business, we don't want your business anymore. And that company, I was contracted with them at the time. And I can't remember his title, but the vice president or the field rep or whoever it was, tried to talk to me and said, hey, I know you're doing infinite banking. We'd really like you to continue to do business with us. We just can't do the infinite banking, but I think I can teach you some ways of how to do this business and be successful without using infinite banking. I said, well, why in the hell would I want to do that? I said, that's not what I do in my own life. Why would I want to show someone or teach someone how to do something that I am not doing myself, that I don't eat, live, and breathe and talk to my family about? Why would I ever do that? I'm not interested. So if you don't want our business anymore, we won't send you any more business. And we didn't send them business for 3 years. Our contract stayed intact and everything. And guess what happened about a year ago? They came back and said, you know what? We'd really like to have your business back, and we'd really like you to start sending us some business again. I said, well, we're doing infinite banking. We're still going to do policy loans. We're going to do the stuff that you learn about in infinite banking. Yeah, that's okay. We understand. So the only thing that we ask is that your clients don't take policy loans in the first year. I said, okay. I said, some of our clients take policy loans before the first year, but, we'll make sure that, if that business gets placed with you, that they can't take policy loans in the first year, and we'll acknowledge that and stuff. And that's good. And then, so then the thing is we, again, we don't send them a ton of business, but we do send them a little. And the reason we send them a little, not the only reason, but one main reason is they were a very good company for children's policy. For kids and children's policies, they were just very good. And I never think about an insurance company necessarily whenever we're designing a policy. We look at the client, we look at their goals and needs and where they're at, their age, their health, the state they live in, all the factors that go into that client. And we're like, okay, what product, what company is going to be the best for them, right? Do we do a typical, what we call the Nelson Nash, a 40-60 plan? And how come we call it the Nelson Nash? Well, because if you look at page 54, 59, 60, 61, and 62, on the book, Becoming Your Own Banker Under Equipment Financing, so that person did almost a 40-60 split. They did 40,000 in premium, 10,000 was base, and 25,000 was PUA, right? Basically a 40-60. So anyway, just in our terms, we kind of nickname that the Nelson. Now, sometimes you might have to have people, like with kids, we may do a little bit more base premium. We might do 60% or 70% of base and less PUA. Or maybe you have somebody that, really, really just desperately needs to have a higher cash value. Then maybe we do 25% or 30% base, the rest in PUA. So it's not a one size fits all, right? It's not a one size fits all. But kind of to get to where I was going, after we came back and this company asked us to come back and write with them again, I asked about probably 6 months later. I called up Patrick, which was my rep at this company. And I said, Patrick, how come you guys wanted us back? I'm just curious. I never asked that question. Why did you guys ask us to come back? And he said, well, Brent, for the 2 or 3 years that you weren't with us, however long it was, he says the one thing you guys never did during that time is you never 1035 exchanged, not even one single policy. He says most agents would have 1035 exchanged our policies into something else because of this. And he says, you never 1035 even one. And I said, no, I don't believe in 1035 exchanging a policy. I mean, again, right? So like there's a lot of policies out there. There's even some great Northwestern Mutual policies out there that people come to us and they have them and they're like, well, I want to exchange this into one of those banking policies. Well, okay, well, first of all, it's not really a banking policy. It's a policy used for infinite banking. But I said, it's a good policy. You have a good policy that has age on it. I don't want to exchange that. I mean, no, it wasn't designed necessarily to be able to use the banking concept early on. But now that it's 8, 10 years, 12 years old, it's a great policy. So let's just use that policy you already have and apply the concept that Nelson Nash taught us.
Yep. No, I mean, those are several great points. You know, exchanging policies, for the most part, it's bad news because you've been capitalizing those policies. There's a whole life policy, which is great. Forget about what company it comes from. If it's a solid whole life policy and it's been capitalized for 10, 15 years, and keep it. Don't exchange it. And regardless of where it comes from. And, you talked about, the company that called you back to try to get you on board. I thought you were going to say they called you back because they wanted your premium is what they wanted. But, you talk about mutual companies. Well, you got mutual companies and mutual holding companies. And from our perspective, they're one and the same because Nelson said, and we agree with that, the biggest determinant in success in the IBC world for a client is the client's behavior, not the company that they place their policy with. Okay, it doesn't make a hill of beans. Yeah, if you do an analysis of company A versus company B, then you'll have after 54 years, you'll have, one company will have, $34,000 more in cash surrender value. Well, so what? Okay, that's just a basic, illustration. It's the client's behavior, which is the most critical aspect. And how does that behavior consistent with coaching, right? Coaching. And who's the coach? The coach better be the practitioner agent, the agent on the record. He or she better be, doing annual reviews with those clients and instruct them over and over and over again about, okay, now life insurance is great. Everybody needs death benefit. Okay, this is great. Your human life value is important, blah, 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 blah. But you're using this for cash flow through your business. Okay, let's review your business structure. Let's review your cash flow. Let's see if you're optimizing your policy correctly. And oh, by the way, you need to expand your system because your cash flow needs have expanded. Those are the types of conversations that practitioners have with their clients. And the coaching is so critically important. This conversation about policies and companies that needs to be discussed. But, the important thing here, I think, is clients' behavior and Brent Kesler's and his team's relationships with those clients, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, yeah. So the thing is, David, and again, this is what Nelson taught us, and it's in the book, in a chart. I can't remember the page number of it, but this is not okay. This is not a product. This is a process, right? It's a process. And sometimes we get hung up on the product, and sometimes as agents out in the field and people that are listening to this today are going to run into people and they're going to say, well, I want to go with this company because I see them on advertisements and they're out there. If I go to the baseball game and they got a big billboard out there and stuff, the big names, those big name companies. And then we kind of say, well, listen, it's not about the company. It's about how you're going to use, that policy. And sometimes there are companies that allow you to design a policy that might be a little bit more favorable at a certain time point. for their needs and goals, whether it's a higher cash value, better for kids, someone with a health challenge or things like that. And then policy design. Well, yeah, you can have a policy design that gives you more cash value in year one, but it's not about year one. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. We got to look down the road and to see what's going on. And as long as you understand, client, about all those pros and cons, you can make a good selection. So we try to go over that with them ahead of time. And that's why we really like when we do strategy calls or strategy, when we do like a strategy meeting with a client, that's what we call it, a strategy call. And we have on our team what we call mentors. They're money mentors, and they'll go through and they'll outline their wants and their needs and their goals. And then, then based on what that is, we design, the best product for them or based on their needs. When I say product, meaning the policy and the company and stuff. And then, we tell them there are other options, but this is, what we're going with. There's just like companies that I just don't own policies with. And there's companies that I own, quite a few policies with. And it just depends on needs and goals of everybody. So it's not a one size fits all.
No, you're right. And, the last 9 policies I bought have been on grandchildren. And that's a challenge now, like you said, to get as much death benefit on a newborn baby. So you really have to, some companies are much better at supporting that type of client, so that is important. And that comes down to the line that most agents out there are contracted with 1, 2, 3 companies. And they do that because it provides them the capability of, running 3 sets of illustrations for a specific client need to find the best fit for that client. So that's important. But, again, banking is a process. Okay. The policy, okay, is the product. Okay. So you have to understand the process. Like you suggest, the process is not hard, but it's nuanced. And once everybody in the conversation, the practitioner and the client have come to agreement how the process best works for that client, either in their current situation or their long-term thinking, where they want to be in 5, 10, 20, 30, 70 years. Okay, it's much easier to figure out what type of policy design or multiple policy designs would set up that goal, okay, for the clients. It's not about, okay, I need cash value in 30 days. What can you get me? Okay. Okay. That's not IBC, guys and gals. That's what one of our practitioners coined as creative policy design. Okay. So anyway, so that's great. So tell us about the first time you met Mr. Nelson Nash.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember when exactly it was, but it was even before that I was actually, or it was maybe early on when I was a client. I was down in Arkansas. I was down in Little Rock, Arkansas, and there was some people down there holding a meeting on IBC. And just talking about IBC, and I just got invited to go down to this meeting, and so like I just can't remember if Nelson was at that meeting or not, but that's really when I was, so kind of outside of, just as far as the first time I heard about it was sitting in that chiropractic conference. And then I remember Nelson coming to Kansas, to Lawrence, Kansas, at least on 2-3 different occasions that I went to his, what I would call like his one-day seminars. He would start in the afternoon and come back and he would finish up, he would come back up and finish the second day. And I don't remember exactly what year that was, but I just started, hearing it more and more. And then he did something else in Kansas. And then I ended up going, down to like Alabama. I was in Alabama, and I did, I think, my first think tank. I don't even remember when that was. And then I didn't go to think tanks for a few years. There was a few year lag period in there, where I didn't go. And then I started going again. And then the last time, of course, I would always go up to Nelson and meet and talk to him and Mary. And, and of course I was a pilot and an aviator and stuff, and he was too. And I told him, I said, hey, Nelson, I flew here and I landed, 20 minutes down the road in an airport or whatever, and talked about airplanes and what type of plane I had. And I remember the thing I remember the most, it was in February of 2019. I think I got that right because he passed in March of 2019. Do I got that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So in February of 2019, it was at Think Tank in Birmingham. And my daughter, who is in the business with me now, her name is Hannah. And Hannah is, she's next month, she'll be 26 years old. So in 2019, she was 20 years old. There was a first think tank that Hannah came to, and it was in February. And I remember being in think tank, and I said, okay, Hannah, I said, I want just to bring you up here. And, it was during a break, and I went up and I grabbed Nelson. I had Hannah with me, and I said, Hannah, I said, this is Nelson Nash. I said, this is the man that is responsible for the way that we live today and how we operate our finances and our money. And it's because of him that we've been able to keep the money in the family, to be able to build that generational wealth that we're continuing to build. And for us to be able to have and do what we're having, and to be able to tell and share this to other people, it was because of his teachings, and I just wanted, I'm so, right. I mean, that was such a powerful moment that I didn't even realize it was a powerful moment. We got a picture with me, Hannah, and Nelson in February of 2019. We still put it on our podcast, our events. We have that frame picture, right? Like if we go to somewhere to do an event, it's in a frame, it's in a picture frame. We put it out on our booth. We put it on our booth with Infinite Banking and all of that, the Infinite Banking book and stuff. But that was just such a powerful moment. And the thing that saddens me the most is in that same conference, in that same conversation, I said, Nelson, I said, now I upgraded from a 172 airplane to a 206. And I said, I want to come up here and I want to take you for a ride in that 206. I think you'd like that plane. He says, I'd really like to do that. I look forward to it. And that was February of 2019, and it didn't happen before March of 2019. So I still reflect back on moments like that, and I'm thinking, man, I got to be more proactive in doing things sooner and quicker, and taking action and making things happen, because you never know when we're going to take our last breath. You never know, as far as when we're going to graduate, from this world to the next. And I just, but so anyway, those are some things that I remember about Nelson. And I really remember, a lot of the things that he just says. And if you were sitting in one of his seminars, he would talk and he would tell stories and tell things, and he would talk directly to you. He would call you by name. He wasn't just speaking to the audience. He would call you by name. He's like, well, Johnny, Brent, whoever was in there, he'd say stuff like that. My daughter Hannah, I just want to give her a plug. Hannah Kesler, she has a podcast called the Money Multiplier Podcast. I'm telling you guys, there's not a lot of dynamic females that are in this business teaching it. I think we need more dynamic females. I love Mary Jo Ehrman. She's very good for the women in the field.
And wait a minute, she's very good for everybody.
My dog. Oh yeah. Well, no, absolutely. But I'm talking about women speaking, because sometimes when you're on stage, when you're on stage and you have a female speaking, they can just grab the audience more than a male can. We've noticed those dynamics, those different dynamics, whether it's right or wrong. It's just good to have women, speakers actually presenting as well. But Hannah has the Money Multiplier podcast. She looks up to Mary Jo a lot. And I've even asked Mary Jo, I just was with Mary Jo last month for an insurance conference trip up in Canada. And I just said, Mary, I said, I said, I appreciate the guidance and wisdom and support, you give Hannah, because I'm her dad. She hears it. I mean, I'm dad. I mean, when dad tells you something, you don't hear it quite the way that you hear it from someone else. And also Hannah has her own coach, her own business coach, because I say certain things, they say maybe the same thing or different things, and they say it in a different way. And I don't know. I just think everybody needs a coach or a mentor or even, a group of coaches or mentors to be able to learn from. I mean, think about the best golfer in the world. They have a coach, right? So I think it's important.
Well, Brent, speaking of your daughter, one of the rules of the infinite banking concept is to think long range. And now you've brought your daughter into the business, and, what does that look like for you and for your daughter for, looking down generations? Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
So important. Generational wealth is so important. I'm about to turn 58 years old next month. My wife is about to turn 60. The stuff that was important to me even 1, 3, 5, 10 years ago, right? That stuff is no longer important to me. Things change as you get older. You probably realize this in your own life. Things that you think are important maybe aren't necessarily not that important. But the one thing that never goes away is your family and being able to build as part of just the legacy. And I'll just give you just like a quick thing. I was down in Florida last week or 2 weeks ago. And so my two sons lived there. My older son, and then and then also my younger son, and then so Hannah's in the middle, right? So anyway, my older son Sean is from my first marriage. He's 36, almost 37. And then Hannah is going to be 26, and my youngest son Zach, that's a pilot for NetJets, he's 24. And so anyway, I have a granddaughter from my older son, and she's 16, and her name is Tori. So Hannah and Tori are talking a lot. They talk a lot about infinite banking, and Tori kind of looks up to Hannah, right? Tori being 16. So Tori's driving now. And Tori comes over to visit me, and I'm by myself in the house, and she just stops to see, hey, Grandpa, how you doing? Wanted to just chat and stuff like that. We just started talking and stuff. And she says, my dad wants me to start putting in $400 or $600 a month into a policy. And I said, I'm telling my dad, I said, I'm working in the summer right now. I'm making good money, but I'm about to go back to school. I'm going to be a junior, and I'm going to be going back to school. And even though I can afford to put that money in a policy now, I'm not going to be able to do it when I'm in school. And I said, well, did you talk to your dad about that? And she said, yeah. And she said, my dad said, Tori, just do it. And if you have trouble putting it in there, I'll figure it out for you. And I said, well, there's your answer right there. He told you if you have difficulty putting it in, he's going to figure it out. So let him figure it out. The thing he's saying is that he's going to have this policy anyway, but he wants you to do it with your own money. And then she said something to me, and she says, well, yeah, but I kind of like to have my money because it's, right. Because I'm kind of putting some of that into a bank and a savings account. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, remember what Hannah told you? And then she kind of remembered. And I said, look, so the dollars that you put into the policy, yes, the thing you could do is take those dollars and put it in a savings account at a conventional bank, Wells Fargo, US Bank, Chase Bank, or you could put that money into a policy. I said, the only difference between an insurance company and a conventional bank is the name on the door. They're both depositories. They're both places for you to store your money and to store your wealth. And then we talked a little bit about the book, Warehouse the Wealth, that Nelson Nash wrote, right? So if you have a choice, where do you want to store your money? Do you want to store it in somebody else's bank where someone else is making the profits, the dividends, the stockholders and the shareholders of the conventional bank? Or do you want to store it into the insurance company, the whole life policy, and a mutual company that pays dividends, where you are the policy owner? You own that contract. You have first right to the cash value in that money. You're earning the profits and the dividends. There are no shareholders. It's a mutual company. It's going in your own banking system where it's growing internally, tax-free. And I know you don't know this right now at 16 years old, but the best news of all, the government's completely out of your hair. Why are they out of your hair? because you've already paid tax on that money that you put into that policy. So you paid tax one time only. You put that money into the policy, and now the growth is growing tax-free inside of the policy. And how can you access cash? You're going to access it through policy loans. How do you think your dad bought the car that you just got at 16 years old? Your new Kia, I forget what it is, a Kia Sorento or whatever it is, a $25,000 car. We did it through policy loans. We instead of going down to the bank and saying, Mr. Banker, I need to buy this car and I need a loan for the car. No. We went down there and we got a loan. Yeah, we got a loan. And we're saying, okay, how much is a car? $25,000. How much do you want your payments to be? So how much are we going to pay ourselves back? So we borrow $25,000. We pay whatever it is, $500 a month back for X amount of time. We're paying ourselves back with interest. But where's that money going to? It's going into the family banking system. And if you don't pay back your policy loans, with interest, then all you're doing is cheating yourself. And not only are you cheating yourself, when you need money for something else down the road, like something else you want to buy, you're not going to be able to borrow it because you're not paying back your banking system, your family banking system. The same way, if you didn't pay a conventional bank back, you wouldn't be able to go and get another loan from them because your credit rating goes down and the bank says, well, this person doesn't pay back their policy loans. So you have to treat your money the same way you treat a bank's money, because if you don't, you're saying your money is not as valuable as the bank's money. So treat your money, pay your policy back with interest on a time schedule. And hey, if you get hung up, maybe you get sick for 2 months, 3 months, maybe there's a hurricane, which we've had hurricanes in Florida. Maybe it's cold outside, whatever happens, maybe you lose a job or something like that. Well, if you have to delay your payments, then it's okay because you're not going to foreclose on you. Tori won't foreclose on Tori, right? But the conventional bank, they don't care what's going on. They don't care if there's COVID. They don't care if there's protests or riots or there's a Republican or Democrat in office. They could care less why you can't pay back your loan. They want their money and they want it now. And if they don't get it, they're going to start foreclosing on your stuff. So can you see how this gives you a peace of mind? And not only does it give you a peace of mind, Tori, and again, at our last family banking meeting up in Idaho, when we went snowmobiling, which was February, I think January or February, we talk about the family banking policies. And we talk about how much money we have in the banking policies. This is the money that we have. This is the money that's going in the policies. And this is our family banking system. And look and see how much more we had this year compared to last year when we did it. Now, again, so all of the kids and grandkids, they don't always want to sit in those meetings. But once we get into it, they really start to see it. And I don't know how much they keep, how much like comes in and stays in them. Because I always thought my kids, Hannah and Zach, when they were growing up, because I would always talk and do calls. I would do 8, 9, 10 calls a day sometimes, and they would hear me talk to these clients, and I never knew if they got it. And sometimes I would make them learn about banking. And how could I make them learn about banking when they don't want to do it at 12, 13, 14 years old? I would put them in the car and say, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go down and get ice cream. Well, the kids will not jump out of a moving car. If you tell them that you're going down to get ice cream and you start talking about the banking concept and you go to the furthest ice cream store across the other side of town, you're putting stuff in them. And I didn't realize until recently, really, in the last couple or few years, how much of that they actually retain. Because now I hear them repeating it and talking about it. I want to give you one other quick story. My 24-year-old son, which is not in my business, which probably understands this concept of what we do the least out of any family member. He's a pilot for NetJets, okay? And he wants to do a loan. He wants to loan money. He wants to make interest on the money he's going to loan. And again, I do a lot of that, and he wants to start doing it as well. So he's got $50,000 that he's going to loan, and he's 24. He just turned 24 a couple months ago. So he goes into the bank, Wells Fargo, with his girlfriend, and he has the he has the $50,000, and he just got it into his bank. Where did it come from? It came from his policy. He's going to make like 15 or 16% on this deal. It's a real estate deal. He's first position in collateral, so good loan and everything. And he goes into the bank, and the guy at Wells Fargo is there. And the guy at Wells Fargo is saying, now he says, okay, I see you're wiring 50,000. He says, now why are you doing this? He says, well, I'm making a loan. He says, you're loaning money? He says, how old are you? Because even though he's 24, he looks 16. I mean, he looks very young. And he says, how old are you? And the guy said, and Zach says, I'm 24. And he says, well, how are you able to loan money? He says, well, he says, I do this thing my dad taught me. I can't tell you everything about it. But so there's a guy that wrote a book, and Zach is telling him all this. This is just Tuesday. This was this week. He says, there's a guy that wrote this book, Nelson Nash, Becoming Your Own Banking. And my dad teaches this concept, and his company is the Money Multiplier, and he teaches this concept. So this is what he does. And the guy says, well, tell me about this, or what? So how do I learn more about this? And so anyway, Zach turns over his phone, and on the back of the phone, what we all have are QR codes on our phone. So somebody, right? It says Brent Kesler, the money coach, themoneymultiplier.com. Hannah has one. Zach has one, right? So again, like people can scan that QR code, and they can go watch our presentation that we have, or go to our website. There's a recorded presentation with downloadable attachments and stuff, and all kind of stuff on the website. So just scan this and go to it. And this is what my dad teaches. He says, I can't really explain it to you, but it's about you keeping your money inside of your own banking system. And then on top of that, Zach even told him, which I was surprised. Zach even told him, he says, as a matter of fact, he says a lot of conventional banks like Wells Fargo, they actually do this. They buy this product for their own portfolio, which, right, just as you guys know, BOLI, I mean, conventional banks, I mean, just go read all the stuff that we get from Barry Dyke. And he talks about it all the time, about how much whole life insurance policies that conventional banks actually buy. But people don't understand it. And so it just really made me proud, because Zach came home and shared that with me and stuff. And I was like, holy crap, dude, I didn't even know you knew all of that. And so I probably didn't answer your question, but as far as legacy, it is very, very important. And so Hannah's very good at talking about this too. It's very important that we get around the kitchen table and we talk about money, because people don't do that. No matter how good you do financially in life or how bad you do, they just don't get around and talk about money. We've got to start doing that. We have to start doing that with families and talking about this multi-generational wealth. Because could you imagine if our parents, which, okay, actually, Lee, you're in the best position because your grandfather did this for you, and then you have your father, and David's in a great position because his father-in-law did it for him. But so my parents didn't do this for me. My wife's parents didn't do this for me. But now I know what's happening. And again, it's not that they didn't do it because they didn't believe it. They didn't know about it. Nobody told them. And out of all the people that we run into on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, hardly anybody has heard of infinite banking. Now, there's more now than there were, but still, like if I get into a crowd with 80 people and I say, has anybody ever heard of the infinite banking concept, Nelson Nash Becoming Your Own Banker? I might get 2 or 3 people that has raised their hands. The other 75 didn't. They didn't. So they're learning about it for the first time. So that's what I say when we think these other agents are competition. They're not. They're colleagues, and we're just sharing the message. I always tell my team this. I say, look, there's 360 million people in the world. In the United States. 360 million people in the United States. 10% of that is 36 million. 1% of that is 3.6 million. Right? I'm just trying to get to a half of 1%. That's all I'm trying to do, just in the United States, not including Canada, wherever else. So there's a lot to go around for everybody. There's tons to go around for everybody. And nobody is ever going to be the right fit for every client. It's just not going to happen. And we're good, Yeah, okay, great. You want to go work with somebody else, and people come to us and say, we like your style, we like the tools that you offer, but again, I always tell people when somebody calls me up and says, James Nethery's my client, James is great. He's fantastic. Continue to work with James, Mary Jo, farming without the bank. Well, I'm not a farmer. Well, that's okay. You're not a farmer. Mary Jo helps people that aren't farmers too. And, I just had this conversation with Caleb Gilliams when we were on another insurance trip in Puerto Rico last month, so sometimes we run across the same client, and whoever is the best fit, for that client, we always try to help out our other colleagues out there too. Because the most important thing is not who they start the policy with. Now, again, I'll be up on stage and I tell them all the time, I say, look, so this concept I'm teaching you, you do not have to do it with us at the Money Multiplier. Now, I hope that you will, because I'm up here sharing it with you. So I hope you will pick us. I'm like, pick me, pick me, pick me. But if you don't, for whatever reason, that's okay. What's important is that you take the stuff I'm sharing with you, you go back, you do your own research on it, do your own research. You're going to find negativity out there, but be able to look through all the noise and do your research, go and do deep research on it. You will be glad you spent your time on this. And if and when you decide to do it, go and look and see who's out there doing this, and again, there's not a ton of people teaching infinite banking. Honestly, if there's a dozen people out there that are really up and teaching it out there, that's probably a lot that you're going to find out there if you're out there searching. There's probably more than a dozen, but there's 20, 50, whatever there is. Go find who's going to be your best choice and who your best fit is. The important thing is to do it and to implement it in your life. As far as if you feel like it's a good thing. And then I go on and I even say, it's probably going to make you feel uncomfortable to start that policy, to sign that policy, to put it in force, even though you agreed to go through all that underwriting and start. Yeah, I want to put in $1,000 or $100 a month into a policy. Well, by the time you get to the end, when it's time to pull the trigger and write the check, that's when the true test comes out. Sometimes all the people that are speaking in your ear, all the noise and negativity, and a lot of that negativity comes from your own family members, by the way. And sometimes you may need to fire your broke-ass brother-in-law. You just may need to fire them from your life. Yeah, you can still have Thanksgiving dinner with them, but you may need to fire them from taking financial advice from them. So, and those are stats that we keep. In our agency, we have about 58% of our policies where a person comes up and says, I want to start a policy. They have to go through the approval process. About 58% of them put the policy in force. Now, it's not 58 out of 100. It's like 58 out of 87%. Why 87 and not 100? Because about 13% of your applicants, people that apply, are going to be denied for whatever reason. Health reason, maybe they have a criminal history, whatever. 13%, at least those are our stats in our agency, 13% are going to be denied. But still, we got 58 out of 87. I don't like those numbers. I don't like them. Why is the other, like say 29 or 30, whatever percentage that is, why are they not following through? It's because they just can't pull the trigger to start the policy. So that's our biggest battle that we have right now in this industry is we're battling with, and I'll just say it, it's like mainly the IUL guys, because people are showing these IUL, they're showing these unrealistic illustrations that are not going to do what they say they're going to do. I mean, is it possible? Sure. It's possible that I'm the next quarterback for this Kansas City Chiefs too. Anything's possible, but it's just not gonna happen. So then when that happens, we just try to really say, hey, look, if you really want to start an IUL, start one. But if I thought an IUL was good, I could make a great commission off of an IUL, but I would never sell one because I would never buy one. But if you really want to dig more into the IUL, go watch some of our videos that we have, Whole Life versus IUL. We have several. And then we even have people from the insurance companies. Like I'll tell you, Clay Summers, and you guys know Clay Summers from One America. been there over 40 years. Clay Summers is an IUL expert when he goes to compare whole life versus IUL. And Clay Summers gets on some of our calls sometimes where a client is really like, I got to have IUL. And we say, okay, if you want IUL, but before you do that, we'll just have a call with Clay Summers and let Clay walk you through that IUL policy compared to what this whole life is. Even if you don't work with us, we just want you to have the information because we don't want you coming back a couple years down the road and saying, well, my IUL didn't perform the way that it was supposed to. Even though it's not going to be buying it from us, you're never going to buy an IUL from us ever, 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 ever. It'll never happen, not as long as I'm breathing, but at least you'll know what you'll have.
Well, Brent, thank you for your time today. And as we close our conversation together, we just want to hear from you. What does the infinite banking concept mean?
Oh, I mean, infinite banking concept is just the stone. It is the process. It is the concept that will completely take control of your financial life, will allow you to have your financial life set in a way that you are in complete control of everything that's going on with you financially, which again, I'm a former chiropractor. So I like to, I'm still a chiropractor, I just don't practice anymore. So I like to look at this from a health status too. I like to help people with their health. Well, the number one cause of death is what? I mean, at least it was a year or two ago. I don't know if it still is. I think it is. The number one cause of death is heart disease. What's the number one cause of heart disease? Is stress. What's the number one cause of stress? Money and finances. So can you see how you're helping your health by having control of your own money and your own banking system? And it does require you to be disciplined. But the thing is, after you see the power of how this works, and I always tell people, I say, you're not going to be comfortable probably when you first start it. You're going to have some doubts, but don't take my word for it. Okay, don't take our team's word for it at the Money Multiplier. Go out there and Google, or go out and Google my name, Brent Kesler. Go Google the Money Multiplier, even Google infinite banking, whatever, and go Google the clients that are actually doing this in their own life and see the hundreds of testimonials, success stories, plan designs, case studies of how this works for other people. I design your policy the same way that I design mine. I don't put any secret sauce on mine that I don't put on yours, right? There's just nothing that I'm holding back or keeping secret from you that I wouldn't put on your policy. And you're creating not only a wealth building financial tool for yourself and your family, but for your children, your grandchildren, and future generations to come. And if everybody knew what you had, if everybody knew about this, they would be lined up out the door to get in there and get some. Remember what Warren Buffett said. I don't know when he said it, but I heard it in October of 2008. He said, if poor people would just start doing what rich people do, they wouldn't be poor anymore. And all we're doing is not reinventing the wheel. We're adding one step to our financial life. And what is that step? We're adding this step of practicing the infinite banking concept. That's what we're adding to our life. And it's been around for over 200 years. Go out and research the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Stanleys, the Barclays. Go look and see how Walt Disney funded Walt Disney World, how Ray Kroc funded McDonald's, how Pampered Chef got started before Warren Buffett bought Pampered Chef. Go to Joe Biden. Go look at Joe Biden from an article in 2014, I believe it is, over 10 years old. At the time, Joe Biden owned 6 life insurance policies. Joe Biden says, I think he said, I have no stocks or bonds or savings. I think that's what he said. Don't hold me a quote to that, but I have a quote on that. He says, but he has 6 life insurance policies back in 2024, a mutual company, in a mutual company that we do business with. Who knows how many policies Joe Biden owns now? Or I don't know, maybe Hunter has them all. I usually save that joke to the end of my talk.
Well, thank you so much, Brent. Thank you for sharing your passion with us. We really appreciate your time today.